I actually wanted to, thank you for coming. I wanted to pick up with something that we mentioned last week.
I'm going to ask you to return that, okay?
Yes,
Okay.
no problem. Primarily because I thought it was a nice idea, but also because it relates to this week's parsha, as well as last week's parsha, because it's a discussion. The way that Moshe's parents introduced us in last week's parsha, this is not the shir for today, this is just an idea I wanted to share, because I found it meaningful, and I thought about it a lot since I read it from Moshe Feinstein. And that is that the way that Moshe's parents introduced us in last week's parsha is anonymous, right? We're told V'yikach ish beis Levi, and that's what the Gemara in Sota says. Who is this? So we're told that it was Moshe's father Amram, and he took a daughter from the house of Levi, V'yikach. So why did he Vayelech V'yikach? Why did he go? Where was he going? Where was he taking? So we're told in the Gemara that he went by the advice of his daughter Miriam to remarry his mother, and he took her to be a wife for a second time. And although we know that those are Moshe's parents, Amram and Yocheved, they don't remain anonymous, and we are, in fact, told that his parents were Amram and Yocheved, and that's in this week's parsha. That we're told towards the beginning of this week's parsha, in Pasuk Chaf, it's not on your source sheets, but it's in Perek Vav, Pasuk Chaf, we're told, after the Torah continues and goes through the lineage, it says, Vayikach Amram es Yocheved dodaso lo lisha, and Amram took his aunt Yocheved as a wife. Vatele lo es Aaron ves Moshe ushnei chay Amram, and it tells us the years of their lives. So we are told that they were married and they had sons named Aaron and Moshe. And the question is, if why are they anonymous when we're told about them in Shemos, and then why are they named, and why is their son Moshe named as being their child only later on in Parshas Vayera? So a very similar lashon. It says Vayikach Amram es Yocheved dodaso, just like it says Vayikach ish beis Levi. But here, if it chooses to share his name, whereas there it does not. He's anonymous over there. So I saw a very beautiful idea from Moshe Feinstein that I think is very insightful, and something that I think a lot about as a parent, and I think a lot about as a teacher as well. And I guess something that we all think about as parents and teachers in our roles, and that is we always try to find a balance between encouraging our students and our children and giving them a sense of value and purpose, and expressing to them that whatever they accomplish, we're proud of them. But also we never want to sell them short, and sometimes by overpraising and by encouraging them too much and validating their successes too much, we sometimes sell them short in terms of prodding them to go even further, to strive even further. Sometimes we're afraid that that if we come across as not supportive or proud of their successes, then we might alienate them. But on the other hand, if we're too validating of their early successes in life, sometimes they're satisfied with mediocrity, or satisfied without working to their heart. Does that make sense? And I think we all struggle with that. I remember a while back I was in a camp, and they had a chidon. My son happened to be a camper in the camp a while ago, and he was much younger than the other campers. Just because he was a staff child, so he happened to be there. So I brought him to the chidon, and in the chidon they wanted to encourage the children to study and memorize, Brei Nefashos, Na'al Mechia, and Moda'ani, and I brought my son, and he was able to recite Brei Nefashos, Na'al Mechia, and Moda'ani. And I remember the other mechanechim around were just, they were amazed. I don't know why they were amazed. I guess because in this camp a lot of the kids were not able to do that, and he was so much younger. And instead of being proud of that fact, I found it to be, I was upset by it. Not because of my son's accomplishments, but it made me sad that the other kids that saying Alamich and Brei Nefashos was something so exceptional. Like, okay, so just because my child was 6 or 7 years old, so like, I was proud of him, but I didn't walk away thinking, wow, my son is exceptional. I thought, wow, my son is doing what he should be doing. And
I'm sorry.
You're not fine. And the way in which this relates,
It's okay.
let's see, the way in which this relates is by, I thought, a very insightful comment from Moshe Feinstein. So he points, I'm just going to read from his words from the Drash Moshe, and he discusses the difference between Vayikach Amram es Yocheved versus the first time we're introduced them when they're an anonymous man and woman from Shevet Levi. So he says as follows: "He says Mashalo Huskar Shem Aviv V'Shem Imo Shel Moshe Ad Achar Shen Stav Alios Goel." Why are Moshe's parents' names only mentioned after he's selected to be the Redeemer of the Jewish people? Meaning, at this point in the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu has already appeared to him at the Sneh. Kadosh Baruch Hu has already given him Moshe his task, and Moshe has already accepted, although reluctantly, his task is being the Redeemer of the Jewish people. So what's the significance between the fact that now Moshe Rabbeinu's tafkid is solidified as being the goal of the Jewish people and a Navi, and how does that relate to the fact that his parents now have names? So he says as follows. He says, Nira lanias daiti, it appears to me, that a person should be careful not to praise their child, even if he sees his child has incredible abilities. Again, he's talking about a male child here, but he's just using the masculine. This, of course, refers to female children as well. Or even if, as in Moshe's case, the house is filled with light, right? You see this child is exceptional. You see this child is really something special. You should be careful. A parent should never rest on their laurels and say this child needs no further guidance, right? They're very talented. I'm confident that they can accomplish a lot. And be confident that they will do what you want to do simply because they have the ability to do so. Because oftentimes you find when parents have a talented child, or just any child who we view as talented, Kishron Godel, who has great abilities, so mechalav shelo lechancho v'lo le'asro b'yoter ki choshev shavad yatam chacham yirei Elokim. At a certain point in his education, we say that's enough, and we no longer find it necessary to prod him, to educate him, to show him the right path, because we've said that, of course, to become a Talmid Chacham, to become a Yirei Elokim. We've done everything we could up until this point. Ela Adarav, the opposite is true, says Rav Moshe. Yesh L'chosh, we have to be concerned, Shebekishronosav kagdolim yitkadel b'inyanim acherim, that when a child is talented, so oftentimes their talents might take them in a different direction. V'yitzpat liyatzro, as we know, that the Gemara tells us in Sukkah, Gadol mechaver rosh yitzar gadol himen. Whoever is greater than their friends, their yitzar hara is greater as well. But I don't think we have to talk about yitzar hara so much. We can even say that when someone is talented, their talents can oftentimes give them many interests, using our language, right? Someone who's talented in Torah is and has good midos, right? We can very well see that those character traits, that effervescence, that ability to learn, can sometimes be used in the negative if it's not channeled properly. But sarach lilmodo to biyoter lechancho biyoter, we have to teach them, we have to educate them greater, l'ashkiach alav, and to be constantly mashkiach upon them, to direct them, to be on top of them, to watch after them. Shilchein lo nishtabech Amram v'Yocheved bivno hagadol mikol ha'olam ad sheniskadol v'nasa navi Hashem v'shliach legeula. As we see, Moshe and Amram and Yocheved, are not praised and told, their names are not mentioned in conjunction to Moshe's name, until he grew up and until he finally became a Navi of Hashem and the Shliach for the Geula. I thought that was very, it's Moshe Feinstein, so for me to praise him and saying he's insightful is redundant, but I thought that was very important, that Yocheved and Amram are not given credit for their son Moshe Rabbeinu simply because he was born and the house was filled with light. He was told that in his voice was the voice of the Jewish people, because they could have very easily at that point in their life said, we have a great son, we have a special gift here, and failed to realize that their job, their tafkidim were not done as parents, and they had a long way to go. And it wasn't until his potential, so to speak, was reached, and he became a Navi, and the goal of the Bnei Yisrael, which we're told is when? How old was he? In his 80s, right? That finally they're praised for rearing a child. And it doesn't mean that I don't think Moshe is saying that all of us should never be satisfied. Our children have become tiger parents and become tyrants in the house and never praise our children. What he is saying is that chinuch is a long process. It's not a short
It's only
process.
at this, or shall we say, advanced age that his parents are given credit for his accomplishments.
Exactly. Interesting insight.
Yocheved and Avram, who
Amram.
was it? Aram must also been in a high.
Yeah.
Very good that they had these the three children.
Yeah.
With such incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They were leaders in their own right. We discussed that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just
But,
interesting, and you mentioned about that, and then when I learned, I don't know if you know Robert Brodowitz, that I used to take class
Yitzchak
with
Brodowitz?
him.
From Baltimore?
he was from Silver Spring.
Silver Spring, yeah.
Yeah, and he said like Asaph had greatness in him.
Yeah.
If he had turned it
Just use it
to
for
the
the good.
right way. So it's really a matter of how you,
That's
you
right.
know, Hashem gives us qualities, and it's a matter of how you
It's up to us to use them.
act on
That's
it.
right. And great parents aren't enough sometimes, are they?
Yeah.
I guess what's also troubling is that in a sense Moshe really did not grow up in their house.
Right.
They didn't, I mean, we talk about rearing, but unlike, their other children, this was much more like, and especially someone talented, I guess, growing up in Paro's house could have been like a Yosef, maybe, figured out how to save the world in all different
Right.
kinds of
Unite the
ways,
two nations.
build, do incredible international blah blah whatever. But it's kind of miraculous that Moshe doesn't choose that direction.
Right. Although he's taking a task for when Yisro's daughters come home and saying, Ish Mitzri saved us, the fact that he doesn't correct them. So Chazal take the task for that. And say that to some extent it was his lack of identification with the Jewish people was the reason why he was not buried in Eretz Yisrael, but Yosef was.
Right,
That's
And the
because,
Medrash says that.
because he argued with Hashem.
Right.
Yeah.
He argued with Hashem, right?
Yeah.
That's also right. He was also taking the task for that, for arguing with Hashem at the end of last week's parsha.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Yosef, Moshe wanted nothing more his whole life than to go back to Eretz Yisrael. But yet, Chazal are still find that the fact that he identifies with an Ish Mitzri is still to his discredit. And despite the fact that Yosef was comfortable living out the rest of his life in Galus, whereas Moshe always endeavored to find his way back to Eretz Yisrael.
Right, but I think it's a little hard that what they meant. And he must have looked Egyptian. It wasn't such a, and he was also between identities. I mean, at that point,
Right.
he didn't know who he was. So the fact that these girls said that's he's Ish Mitzri, like,
Right.
if he might, how would he have corrected him? What was he? He wasn't anything yet. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
it's
Well, there's a lot of
on that
discussion
one.
who was Moshe's identity, the fact that his name is the name not given to him by his parents, the fact that he was not given a name at all in the beginning, he's called a Nar.
He's
His identity
I think, still
is-
trying to figure it out.
His identity, right, is hidden from us, yeah. In the book of Shemos, in the book of names, his name is not.
I have a question because when I was reading Shemot, it said that Aaron and Moshe, the Levites were not enslaved. And I was wondering why. What reason? I mean, Pharaoh didn't have respect for them. Why is it that they were never enslaved? And
Yeah,
if
that's a good
they
question.
could, it said in the,
He can come and go freely.
that they could come and go, so why is that?
Well, it seems to be that even in that's a good question. It seems to be even in Mitzrayim there were classes of people. There was the elite religious leaders, and Paro respected that. When he recognized the God of Israel, he recognized the fact that there were classes of people. And even in his nation, there were people who were the priests, not the Jewish
Yeah,
priests.
Yeah, but it's hard to reconcile.
It's hard to reconcile,
when you
right.
think of Pharaoh.
Especially if you
know.
consider the fact
You
that
would
the whole thing
think-
could have been done away with if we would have just executed Moshe and
Especially
Aaron.
when they were worried that someone would come.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think Pharaoh thought there was someone who would grow up and kill him. Is that true?
Well, he knew that the leader of he was told about
Yeah, so why would he
In fact,
let
Moshe
them
would-
not
would-
be enslaved?
yeah. That's a good question.
I asked myself.
Especially when your daughter comes home with a baby that she finds in the water, and you're told that the leader of the Jewish people was going to be born around that
Well,
time,
and
the
that,
redeemer of the Jewish
and
people.
that daughter
Yeah,
is also interesting because my granddaughter, Shushalundi, well, her name is Bacha.
yeah.
So was Bacha, did she become a Jew? What is the story about Bacha? Why is my daughter,
Yeah.
granddaughter,
Well, her name has God's name in it, right?
pardon me?
Her name has God's name in it.
Yeah, so
Name of God.
well, obviously she had.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think Chazal said that she converted and married Jewish. I mean, I don't know that much about Batya, but I know that
But it's just
Yeah.
so interesting.
she reared Moshe. I mean, to some extent, she reared
Yeah,
Moshe.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
She saved
interesting.
his life.
She saved his life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to focus on one of the makos from this week's parsha, and that is the makos Tzfardea. And I want to do it for the following reason. So we know that when Moshe is sent by Kadosh Baruch Hu to redeem the Jewish people, that the makos play a very unique role in terms of the re-education, not just of as a way to coerce Paro the Mitzrayim, of letting the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim, but also as part of the re-education process for the Jewish people themselves.
Right,
We know
yeah.
we know that the purpose of Hashem's taking Yisrael out of Mitzrayim could have been accomplished with many fewer than 10 makos. And the fact that there are 10 makos means that there was a progression that needs to be fulfilled before the Jewish people can leave. And it's very clear, and not in the Pesukim on your sheet, but it's very clear in the Pesukim at the beginning of this week's parsha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intention when sending Moshe is that there are 3 goals in mind. And these 3 goals that Moshe is told that the lessons that have to be learned are clear from the beginning of this week's parsha. That we're told first in Pasuk Gimel, I'm sorry, it's on your sheets, I apologize. The beginning of Ve'era, it says, Vaydaber Elokim Moshe Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. It says, Ve'era El Avram Yitzchak Vel Yaakov Bekel Shaddai Ushmi Hashem Lo Nadati Lahem. That this Lechena more the Torah tells us, L'bnei Yisrael Ani Hashem Ve'yisi Lachem L'Elokim Ve'yadatim K'Ani Hashem L'Elokechem. That the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the first goal is that the Jewish people are supposed to recognize that although he appeared to the Avos Bekel Shakai, which as we're told was that the God who makes promises but hasn't fulfilled them, we know that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is supposed to come to Jewish people with this understanding that he is now, right? As he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, his name is Yud Kei Vav Kei, symbolic of the fact that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who fulfills his promises. That the same God who made these promises in the past to the Avos is now going to fulfill his promises to the Jewish people now. And that's when Moshe questions Hashem. He says, what should I tell them when they ask who sent me? So Hashem says, tell them that I'm the same God who was with there, who made a promise to their father Abraham, is the same Hashem who comes now and is going to redeem them.
Yet it says there that he wasn't known by that name before for
Right.
the vote, but if you look back, indeed, then
He
the
is.
name has been used before.
Right.
Does the Gemara speak about that?
The Gemara in so the Gemara in Sanhedrin has a whole discussion about this, and there's the question, right? Because the Gemara, and that's the question on the Gemara, is that if you do look at the Pesukim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did appear to Avram in names other than Kel Shakai, also appears as Yud Kei Vav Kei. There is some discussion about that. That's correct. So it's more than just the fact that name wasn't known to them, but there is some discussion about that as well. It's the Gemara in Sanhedrin in the last paragraph that discusses this. So then he says, look, another lesson he's supposed to teach them was L'kachti eschem lilam. In this week's parsha, that not only is the Kadosh Baruch Hu now going to have an individual relationship with the Jewish people and fulfill on his promises, but they're going to become a godly nation. And then we're also told finally in Pasuk Ches, V'veisi eschem el haaretz, I'm going to bring you to the land. And you're going to inherit the land as an inheritance, not on the source sheet. So the third promise is that they're going to inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael, which means that each of the 3 makos, if you look at the progression, you see these lessons are meant to be learned not only by Paro, that there was a God who has a relationship with the Jewish people, and they are the godly people, and they are to inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael, but also, of course, by the Jewish people as well. And if you look at the very last makah, so finally the Torah tells us, not on the sheets again, it says, finally, after Makas B'choros, we're told, Vayikra Moshe Aaron Laila Vayomer Kumu Tz'u Mitoch Ami Gam Atem Gam B'nei Yisrael L'chu Ivdu Et Shem L'keichem B'midrachem. Right, my nation is to leave, they're to serve me, and they're to make their way to Eretz Yisrael. That takes a progression of 10 Makos for the Jewish people to understand that, and that's something that Paro doesn't understand, right? He agrees to allow the males to go, but Moshe needs everybody to go. If we're going to be a godly people, it's not just good enough that we be a nation like you are in Egypt of priests who serve their gods, but we need the entire people to serve Hashem. We all have to go to Eretz Yisrael. Not just some of us can inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael, but all of us have to inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael. So with that in mind, we understand that the Makos were supposed to serve lessons for the Jewish people. They're supposed to be part of the reorientation process. We know that they were slaves for 210 years, and therefore there was a lot of re-education that had to go on. Part of the re-education of bringing them from this level of Tum and Tahara was supposed to be effected through the Makos. So I want to just discuss one Makkah, and that is the Makkah of Tzfardea. And I want to focus on 2 lessons that we explicitly were told by the Gemara we can learn from the Makkah of Tzfardea, and one that we can implicitly learn from the Makkah of Tzfardea. So, first of all, Sephardeia, we're going to refer to it as frogs, but I thought it would be interesting just to point out the Ibn Ezra, this is the second source in the sheet, tells us where does the word Sephardeim come from? Rabbim Amru, many say, and he's actually, the Rabbeinu Hananel says this even more explicitly at greater length. This is source number 2. Shehu min dag nimsa b'Mitzrayim, that it was a fish, but not really a fish. It was a water-dwelling creature in Mitzrayim. Yikra Balashon Arav, in the Arabic language, it was called an al-timsach. V'yotze min ha'ahar v'chotif b'nei adam. It would rise up from the Nile and it would bite people. It would eat them. Ben Bachai says it ate 2 or 3 people at a time. So it's a crocodile. So there is an opinion. He doesn't. Ibn Ezra doesn't subscribe to that. He says va'acher mamru kihem hanimseim berobe hanaharos shmashmim kol. But there's another opinion that says that they are what we find in many of the naharos, none of the rivers, and they make a sound, they make a croak. V'hu hanachon be'enai v'hu yedu, and that's what I think they are. So although he adopts the position that they are frogs, there is a position that they were actually crocodiles, and others point this out as well, including their Ben Bachai. So we're told, let's go to the Pesukah and then we'll look at the Gemara, very well-known Gemara, Gemara Pesachim and Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. This Gemara actually, if anyone was in the adult ed shit that I gave 3 years ago, we discussed the Pasuk of B'chai Behem, the issue of self-sacrifice. So this Gemara is relevant to martyrdom as well, as we'll see. So let's go to the Pesukah. So it says, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe bo Paro v'amarte elav ko amar Hashem shalach es ami v'yavduni. So Hashem says to Moshe, come to Paro and say to him, so says Hashem, send my people so they may serve me. And if you refuse to let my people go, I'm going to send a plague, a magefa of frogs. And what are these frogs going to do? They're going to go into your house, and into your bedroom, into your bed, into your servant's house, into your people's, in your nation's house, into their ovens and into their kneading bowls. And to you, and to your people, and to your servants, the frogs will go up. And then, indeed, Hashem keeps to His word at the beginning of Parak Ches. Vayomer Hashem Pasuk Aleph El Moshe Emor Al Aaron Atei Yetchav Matecha Al Naros Al Yarim Al Ha'agamim Va'al Tzfardim Al Ha'aretz Mitzrayim. So Moshe tells Aaron to raise his hand over the water, and the frogs will do it. And Aaron does that.
What's Ha'agamim?
That's a good question. Marshes. Let's see what they translate it as. He translates it as reservoirs. And Aaron does that, and the frogs ascend on the land of Eretz Yisrael, on the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, so Paro finally in Pasuk Dalet, so Vayikra Paro LaMoshe Aaron Vayomer Ha'tiru El Hashem, daven to Hashem, Vayaser Atzfardeim Imeni, and to remove the frogs from me, Ume'ami, and from my nation, V'ashlecha El Am Ve'izbechu Hashem. So Paro's been educated. And I'll send you to worship your God. Of course, he doesn't follow through on this, but at least we see one of the goals of the Makos is fulfilled, and that he does recognize that the Jewish people are to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But we know that Paro's heart is hardened in Pasuk Aleph. Vayar Paro ki haisa harvacha v'achbeirat libo v'lo shema aleim kasher diber Hashem. The Paro ultimately sees that the frogs are gone. There's no reason, right, for me to acquiesce, because after all, I've been successful in getting the frogs removed. Why should I give them their freedom? And it takes 10 plagues to get there. So the Gemara tells us. This is now the third source. Gemara Maseches Pesachim Daf Nun Gimel Amud Bet. Odu Darash Todus Ish Romi. Todus Ish Romi, who the Gemara has a debate. Who was he? Was he a Jew who had? We know he was a convert. Did he convert for altruistic reasons, or did he convert because he just was fearful that if he didn't convert? So the Gemara says that we do see that he was based on this drasha, the Gemara says we see that he was a convert that converted out of love for Judaism, as we see from the following teaching that he said it. Ma ra'u Chananya, Mishael, v'Azariah shemasru atzman hakadushas Hashem. What did Chananya, Mishael, and Azariah see? What did they take note of? That they were able to sacrifice their lives al Kiddush Hashem. L'kivshan eish, and be allowed themselves to be thrown into a fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar told in Sefer Daniel had erected an idol in the valley of Dura, and all the Jewish people bowed down to it. Right? They weren't given much of a choice under duress. They were told, "Do it or you die." But 3 people, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, refused to bow down to the idol. We're told, and the Gemara says that what gave them the fortitude to be willing to give up their lives al Kiddush Hashem, and not to be thrown into the fiery furnace. This is the third source, the Gemara Pesachim Daf Nun Gimel Beis. So nasu kal v'chomer ba'atzma mitzfardeim. They drew a kal v'chomer, right, from the tzfardeim, right. Uma tzfardeim she'em mitzuyam al kedushas Hashem k'sev behu uva alu b'beitecha v'tanorasecha uv'misharotecha. When it comes to the frog, just like the frogs who are not commanded al Kiddush Hashem, right? Frogs are not commanded to sacrifice themselves for God. Yet they were willing to sacrifice themselves. Where do we see they were willing to sacrifice themselves? So if we go back to the Psukim, when Hashem tells Moshe what's going to happen, he says, what's going to happen? The frogs are going to come, Pasach Chavchet up above, Va'alu uva'u b'beitecha, into your homes, uva'chadar mishkavcha, va'amitasecha u'beis avadecha, into your house, Paro, into your slaves, and they're going to go into your tanurim, to your ovens, into your kneading bowls. Tanurim, so the Gemara is going to say that the Tanurim were lit. They were lit fires, and the frogs are willing to sacrifice themselves on behalf of Hashem. As part of this nace, they're willing to sacrifice themselves. How do they know this? So let's go back to the Gemara. Just like frogs are not commanded, al Kiddush Hashem, Ksiv Behu, it says, Va'alu b'beitecha, go up into your houses, uv'tanoratecha, into your ovens, uv'mishmorasecha, and into your kneading bowls. So asks the Gemara, when do we find that kneading bowls are placed next to the oven? When the fire is already lit. So the fact that Hashem says the frogs are going to go into your ovens and into your kneading bowls implies that when are the kneading bowls and the ovens next to each other? When the ovens are lit. And therefore, some frogs are willing to go into the fiery furnace. So, we said, Mechachanana, Mishael, Azariah, Shemitzuyan, al Kiddush Hashem, who are commanded al Kiddush Hashem, right? It's a pasuk, as Rashi points out, of not Rashi, but V'nigdashti b'soch b'nei Yisrael. There's a commandment that you have to be Mekadesh Shem Hashem, al achas kama v'kama, all the more so. That's what the Gemara says. They learned the lesson from the frogs. So, it's a difficult Gemara. So first of all, what is it that they didn't know? So Rashi points out, the Rashi ran to the Gemara says, Ma'ra'u, shalo darshu v'chai b'hem. Why did they say v'chai b'hem? We know the Torah tells us v'chai b'hem, to live by the Torah. And Chazal tells us, v'lo shiamus b'hem, don't die by the mitzvah. So how did they know that if a Kadosh Baruch Hu desires more than anything else our life and our well-being, how do they know that in this case they're supposed to give up their lives?
Well, it's the big 3, isn't it?
So that's what Tosfos asks. So Tosfos says in the next source, this is a well-known Tosfos, and we'll say why in a second. Perish HaKuntris, Ma Ra'u Shalo Darshu V'chai B'hem V'lo Shamas B'hem. That's what Rashi says. So they were conflicted. On the one hand, we have a pasuk of V'nekdashi B'soch B'nei Yisrael V'lo T'chalu Hashem, right now to be Mechal Shem Hashem, you have to make Mekadesh Shem Hashem. On the other hand, we also have a directive that you have to live by the Torah. So Rashi says they didn't know, right? They were conflicted. And how did they know they should not choose life? So it says Tosfos, V'kasha, this is difficult. Because this was in public, right? The valley was the idol was in the valley of Dura. Nebuchadnezzar had the entire Jewish people gathered together, and they defied him publicly. Umaskinan b'Sanhedrin, and the Gemara concludes in Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Ayin Daled Ben Aleph, the last source on the page on our source sheet, the L'chuli Alma, according to everybody, b'farhesya chayav limsor atzmo, that when it comes to doing an aveira b'farhesya in public, you have to give up your life. Afilu a mitzvah kala, even for a small and significant mitzvah. Now, notice he didn't say anything about avodah zarah, so that's going to be included now in the answer as well. But it wasn't avodah zarah, and it wasn't even a mitzvah that they were violating. He quotes Rabbeinu Tam, Perush Rabbeinu Tam, that Salam Zesh Asa Nebuchadnezzar. The Nebuchadnezzar was willing to take whatever he can get from Hanan, Mishael, Azariah. And this idol that he wanted them to bow down to, Lav avodah zarah have, it wasn't avodah zarah, El indarta she'asa l'chvod atzmo. It was like, I don't know, something he put around his neck to mechabed himself. It wasn't actually avodah zarah. It might have given the appearance of avodah zarah, but it was part of his royal garb. It was part of his royal jewelry that he used to adorn himself. Ulakach, right? Ulakach amar mara'u. And that's what they said, what should we do? Not even to give the impression that we're doing avodah zarah. It's not really avodah zarah. It's not really a mitzvah. It's just giving the impression, not to give an inch. So why won't we even give an inch even if it's not a real avera? Because of a chayvim. So that's the first answer Rabbeinu Tam gives. And he brings some proofs to say that this avodah zarah was not really avodah zarah. And then then the one of the Balei Tosfos on the second to last line gives another well-known answer. Second to last line, V'ri mefaresh ma ra'u shelo barchu. Why didn't they simply run away? Similar to what we were discussing last week with Eov. Why didn't they run away? That was an option also. Sharei kodem hamaisa hayu yicholim levroach. They could have run away like Daniel did before they got to such a point. Why didn't they run away knowing this is going to happen? K'moshe asa Daniel. So the reason why they didn't run away is because they chose to self-sacrifice. They chose to sacrifice even though they didn't have to. That's what the Re says.
So is that a good thing?
So interesting. So Tosfos clear here, and he says it more explicitly in Maseches Avodah Zarah. Rabbeinu Tam says there, but here we can infer it as well, is of the opinion that you are allowed to give up your life, even if it's not for one of the big three, even if you're not required to. And when we discussed this a few years ago, we discussed that it's important to keep in mind, as we can contrast this with the Rambam in a second, that some suggest that this has a lot to do with where Tosfos, the Balei Tosfos, were living at the time. They were dealing with the pogroms and not the Inquisition, the pogroms and the what's it called again, the in the Middle Ages. What's that?
Crusades.
The Crusades. Thank you. And the Crusades, and therefore it was happening anyhow. Jews were sacrificing their lives, and therefore Tosfos. This was Ma'asim Shebechol Yom, unfortunately, with what they were dealing with, and therefore they had to hold a line, and they also had to. Some suggest that it would have been they couldn't give the impression that what these Jews were doing was they died in vain.
But weren't they dying because they were about to be converted?
In some cases, but in some cases, I guess Jews were dying either preemptively before they even got to that point, and they were, I guess, dying for things much less than conversion.
I was thinking about Mordechai.
Yeah.
The story that he was.
The Haman.
Yeah, but in that case, I guess it's more complicated because he doesn't just put his own life in danger; he puts the entire Jewish world in danger. And I have to think that people thought
Seems
this
like
is worth it.
Yeah, we're going to discuss that in 1 second. We'll get there 1 second. And if you contrast with the Rambam, and again, then on the top of the next page, if you turn over the sheet, we take it for granted that where Jews live now in any country in the Middle East other than Israel, their lives are, practicing religion is not an option for most of them. We know that traditionally Muslims and Jews were both persecuted by the Catholic Church, and therefore in Muslim countries, Jews were had a much easier time. They did not have to deal with the same level of persecution, which is why even we see that in the halacha that develops some of these Muslim countries, there's a lot more unanimity because they were able to practice for so many years an unbroken tradition. Whereas in the Ashkenazi communities, Jews were constantly fleeing, and therefore that's why there's so many different ways to practice in the Ashkenazi community, more so than you find in the Sephardi community. And the Rambam therefore says, if you look at the top of the next page, in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, where he discusses when you have to give up your life, he says, Kol Beis Yisrael Mitzuyan al Kiddush Hashem. Every household, interesting, not just every Jew, but every household is commanded on the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. Hagadol Hazeh, Shneimar, in this great act of Kiddush Hashem, as it says, V'nikdashti b'sof b'nei Yisrael, I'll be sanctified amongst the Jewish people. Umuzharim shelo lechalu Shneimar, not only do we have to create a Kiddush Hashem, we also can, God forbid, create a Chil Hashem, as it says, Lo techalu Hashem kadshi, V'nikdashti b'sof b'nei Yisrael. Right? So Chil Hashem and Kiddush Hashem are actually dafka in front of other Jews. Ketzai, when does this apply, says the Rambam? Kishyamod oved kochavim v'yanos es Yisrael la'avor achas mikol mitzvos hamuras b'Torah. When we are coerced by the non-Jew to violate any of the mitzvos in the Torah, o yehargenu ya'avor, or we are told to kill. In that case, ya'avor v'al yarig, you are to transgress and not to die. So he thinks. Kate said, how is this? Let's go back to that line again. Kishyamdu oved kochavim v'yansu es Yisrael la'avor al achas mikol mitzvos hamuras b'Torah. when it recurs to violate any other, the 611 mitzvahs in the Torah, O Yargen, or they'll kill us, we are commanded, Ya'avor v'al yehareg. If you do the Aveira, it's a chil Hashem. If you don't do the Aveira, it's a chil Hashem. If you give up your life, it's a chil Hashem. So that's what he's saying. When is it lo tchalu et shem kachi? If they ask you to do an Aveira, it's not one of the big three, and you refuse to transgress, you're in violation. Shneamar, as it says, the mitzvos asher yaseh sam adam v'chai behem, that we are to live by the Torah. That's a Rashi was pointed out. V'chai behem v'lo shiyamas behem. You are to live by the mitzvos, not die by the mitzvos. Ve'emes, and if you choose to die below over and not to transgress the mitzvah, harezu mischai b'nashu. It's like committing suicide. So the Rambam clearly disagrees with the Baalei Tosfos, and the Rambam clearly says that you're not allowed to give up your life for anything other than the big three. Now, that being said, the Gemara in Sanhedrin does say that all this is only true if it's not a time of persecution. If it's a time of religious persecution, you give up your life even for a small Aveira.
I don't think, would the Rambam agree with that?
I think he would, but I think he's talking about here, it's not a time of religious persecution.
Well, didn't he, I don't know if it was Garrett Hateman, one of the other things,
Yeah.
there was a situation where Jews were forced to convert to Islam, I think, and he said you should convert instead of kill yourself. Isn't it?
I don't know the Geras Teimanu. I know that the question is asked by
I don't think it's
that
a Garrett Hateman. It's one of the other, like, he got these real life questions, and I think he said you should convert, you shouldn't, because people were sacrificing themselves.
And was it?
I might be in the Rambam.
No, I know you're
video.
talking.
I'd have
No,
to
no,
take
you
a look.
are. You're talking about. I just don't know it that well. I know what you're
I'll
talking
have to
about.
see it again.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just don't know it well. But, yes. But yeah, this is interesting. This is the Machlokas. He's not only the Ramban agrees, and the Ramban also is from the Arabic lands, agrees with the Rambam as opposed to the Rebbeinu Tam.
I mean, Rambam didn't have it, just because we're saying Arabic lands, I mean, he was also persecuted, he
He was
had to
also-
move around, it's not like,
He did,
it
but
was
right.
like living in America, like.
But I guess the
it's
people
not.
that he was speaking to, I guess, were not. I guess the persecution was not the same level as those who were living in France and Germany at the time, in the 1100s.
Or maybe he didn't see Islam as Avodah Zarah, and
Well, that's-
Christianity he did.
Right. So there's a discussion also whether or not Islam is Avodah Zarah. That's correct as well. It's also machlokas if Christianity is Avodah Zarah, meaning. Okay, so yeah, this is clearly a much bigger topic. But what I wanted to, the reason I really want to point out is that there's a well-known story which is told about the Shagas Aryeh of Aryeh Leib Ginsburg, who lived in the 1600s, 1695 to 1785. The story is told that he was once visiting the shul where the Gra, I guess where his parents died, and the Vilna Gaon, his dates are 1720 to 1797. So he's 25 years younger than the Shagas Aryeh. So he was a child at the time. This is a well-known story that's brought down. And the Shagas Aryeh was visiting the shul, and he asked the following question. He says that if you look at the Gemara says up above that Ma Ra'u Chanani Mishal Vazaria. What did they see that they did not that they committed, that they were willing to give up their lives? And it said they learned it from the Kalachon, from the frogs. But the frogs weren't commanded al Kadush Kiddush Hashem. But says the Shagas Aryeh, he asked the following question. If you look at the Psukim, when Hashem commands the Makkah, what does he say in Pasuk Chav Ches? He says, V'sharatz hayaor tzfardeim va'alu uva'u beitecha, and some of them are going to go uvatana rasecha uv misharatecha. Some of them are going to go into your ovens. So to say that the frogs weren't commanded, if we could use such a line, frogs being commanded of anything, is really disingenuous and does not seem to be what the Psukim are implying. The Psukim are implying that Kadosh Baruch Hu, when he commanded the Makkah, did say that some of the frogs are going to go into the oven. So it's not really a Kal V'chomer, because Mishal Chanani Ve'ezariah should have turned around and said, wait a minute, the frogs, Hashem already predicted they were going to go into the ovens. Who says we have to go into the ovens willingly? That's not a requirement for us. So the story goes that who was in the audience but none other than a young boy, whose name is Eliyahu Kramer, who would become the Vilna Gaon, and he raised his hand and he gave an answer that others suggest as well. And he says that every individual frog could have chosen to go into the bedroom, right? If I would have been asked and I was a frog, I'd go into Paro's bed. That would be where I would have hung out. Right? I would have stayed in the bedroom. And the Torah gives that as an option. I would have gone to the kneading bowl and hung out with the dough. But every individual frog had to make a decision, said the Gemara, whether or not he wanted to be the frog who stayed with the dough and under the covers of the bed, or that he would go into the oven. And some frogs chose to go into the ovens. That's what he says, the Vilna Gaon.
So many went
Okay.
into the ovens.
Yeah. So, right, so this is obviously more here than what just meets the eye,
Yeah.
correct?
And nobody's troubled that they're learning this from a
Frogs.
lower species
Yeah.
that doesn't have, wisdom, like
Yes.
like human beings are. like
Yeah.
that,
So that's a good question. So I want
and
that's
even the Vilna Gaon's answer is a little
it's a
strange.
It's a child's
But
answer.
yeah. Okay.
But as the story goes, the Shagasari liked the answer very much. Whether or not he thought of it on his own, I imagine it occurred to him. Others said this. And he kissed him on the face and said, "Zeh Katan Gadol Yeh, you'll become a leader of the Jewish people."
I don't know if this is applicable, but I think that human beings can learn from, we can learn from some
Yes.
of the qualities of man.
Yeah, we can learn qualities from animals. That's sure.
Yeah, so that,
And that's the point of the parsha I wanted to just take, just on talking about lessons we can learn from
you
from
know,
the Makos.
you know, you read this, you read the Torah, it's so interesting to me that everything in the Torah, as we go on to years, ages, we see things that we didn't see before.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
Because it's right there.
Yes.
And to me, when you read something like this, that the frogs went into the ovens, in the Eden, you know,
It's not a far concept, unfortunately, to us. It's not something we haven't lived through. 100%. And that's one of, I think, the questions that, and I remember a number of years ago I read a drasha from Rav Eli Baruch Shulman, who was one of the Rishiv in YU, and he asked this question. He said, first of all, there were many Jews who, in many similar difficult situations, sacrificed their lives. So to say that we're going to learn a lesson from the frogs, I'm saying there were Jews who sacrificed for sure. Right, and in recent history as well. So they learned a lesson from the frogs, right? There were many Jews who didn't have to rationalize at all. They just did it because they knew it was the right thing to do. And secondly, it's giving the frogs a level of knowledge, and that's going to be the next thing we're going to learn about them, a certain insight the frogs had that doesn't exist. I mean, so if it's all allegorical, right, if none of it's literal, right, the frogs obviously did what they did because they were frogs. So then all the more so what lesson we learn from them? They were acting like frogs, right? They didn't know, they didn't have they didn't have the ability to choose one from another. So it's a good question. It's a good question, and of course the question is also about Avodah Zarah, right? Clearly, Tosfos' answer notwithstanding, the simple read in Sefer Daniel is that there was Avodah Zarah going on at the time. And even though Tosfos is forced to give an answer that was only Avodah Zarah, they really were standing up to Avodah Zarah. And it was before Hestia, so the questions are better than the answers.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
If this is also the re-education of Am Yisrael, of the door of Mitzrayim,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if this is the lesson of the Sfardea, this is what they're living. They are being persecuted and like their lives are miserable because they're Jews.
Right.
And they're clearly being enslaved and so it feels like there might be another lesson for them because this is a lesson I feel like
Yeah.
isn't news.
Right, and these lessons, we're talking about lessons for the Jews. It's not clear that they were, they're learning this particular lesson. I'm talking about more for us. What can we learn from the Makos?
But you made it clear there was every education for that door.
Right, the progression
so
of
what
Makos.
would be? Oh, so I thought each Makkah was meant to teach them something.
There was, but who knows if this was the actual lesson. It's just something that we can learn from the Makos. But yeah, I don't know if they actually were able, I would imagine that they were at a very high level. They could probably draw
well, they're supposed
inferences
to
like
be
this.
on a higher level.
Yeah, they could probably draw, but right. So what I meant is that there was lessons of the Makos, it's a progression for the Jewish people. And
Okay.
So it only says us about Sfardea, but not about any of the other living things like beasts or lice or,
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
But probably each Makkah
Right.
has its explanation.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
I would think.
Right, especially those dealing with, So, based on what he said, and I think it's, I'm going to use what he said, but take it a little bit step further, and I think it's an interesting point, which is the following. Meaning, you're right. But the nature of a frog wouldn't be to go into a burning hot oven, right? It wouldn't be the nature of a frog. And although I don't think we would give the frogs the intelligence and the knowledge to not go into, to make a decision, it's not within their nature to do something which they know is harmful to themselves. And when the Vilna Gaon, as a 7-year-old child, but it's brought down, said that every frog had to make that decision for himself, what he was really saying is not that every frog made an intelligent decision. It was that every frog, that part of the Makkah and Hashem's word being fulfilled necessitated that certain frogs go into the ovens, because it was the Var Hashem. But by nature, no frog would go into the ovens because a frog wouldn't go to a burning hot oven. A frog could be in a burning hot oven and then be incinerated once it was there already. But to jump into a burning hot oven, right, would be against the nature of the way a frog is created. I don't know frogs, but I doubt it seem like they would jump into fire. They probably are instinctively they probably avoid danger. And therefore the question about Chanani, Mishael, Vazari is, you think about it for a second, although every Jew at the time knew that worshipping of Avodah Zarah was wrong, right? No one stood up and did anything about it, right? And who are we to, right? Castigate them because they were under duress of life, right? They were threatened with their very lives. And yet, what gave Hanana, Mishael, Vazariah the inspiration, if you will, to stand up to it? They said, "You're right. It might not be, although we know it's right, and everyone else knows that the right thing to do is give your life, right? My life is the most valuable thing I have. V'chai behem," says Rashi. Right? Rashi says v'chai behem, meaning even though intellectually I know the right decision to do would be to sacrifice life, every other Jew knew that as well. So my nature is to run away from the fire. My nature is to run away and go towards life. But if everybody does that, just like in the case of the Makkah, so then it's a Chil Hashem. The opposite of Kiddush Hashem is a Chil Hashem. If every frog were to follow its nature, so to speak, and to run away from the fire, so Hashem's name and Hashem's word would it be fulfilled, and it would be a Chil Hashem, and he would be seen as a liar in front of all Bnei Israel. And therefore, some frogs went against their nature. Whatever that means, they went against their nature. Whether it means that they made an intellectual decision, we can assume probably not. But some frogs, said the Vilna Gaon, right, made the choice of jumping into that fire. Or whatever it is that compelled them, they did it anyhow. Therefore, Hanani, Mishael, Vazari, what's so amazing about what they did, according to the Gemara, is not simply that they were willing to sacrifice lives for Avodah Zarah. You're required to do that. But when you're three out of the entire nation of Israel, that makes it incredible, right? Had they lived during a generation when everyone was sacrificing their lives also, so of course you would have called them Kedoshim, of course you would have praised them for it. But when no one else is doing it, when everyone else is willing to go along with it because of fear for their lives, so that makes it exceptional. And therefore, again, if we could use the Makos as a lesson, right? Although the whole process, as we said, was a lesson for the Jewish people, but it's just lessons we can learn from the Makos as part of one of fulfilling our tafkidim as the nation of Israel and the people of Hashem and the keepers of the mitzvah, inheritors of the land of Israel. That's the idea that sometimes it means going against nature as well. And we know that the Mitzrayim are taking the task for this, right? The Rambam asks, he says, "What? It's not the Mitzrayim's fault, right?" Well-known Rambam. Hashem promised Avram already that your children are going to be doomed, they're going to be worked, and the V'inu they're going to inflict pain on them. So what does the Rambam say famously? It didn't have to be the Mitzrayim. It didn't have to be that Mitzri. So, right? It doesn't have. Sometimes the answer is it doesn't have to be you, and sometimes the answer is just because everyone else is making the wrong decision doesn't mean that you should not be making the right decision. And that's what Chanam Yeshar Vazari understood. That they could have very easily been anonymous. They could have very easily found a way and an excuse. It was just an adornment of the king. It wasn't Avodah Zarah. We could have run away, yes, or we could have done it, and Hashem would have forgiven us, and we got the Shemayim. But they chose to make the much harder decision, going against their nature, because somebody's going against your nature. Even when you know it's the right thing to do, somebody's inertia draws us in the opposite direction. They knew that was expected of them was much greater, and as a result, Rechanan Mishal Vazari, who never would have been mentioned, now they are they're forever mentioned in the Gemara, and Hashem chose to save their life for that reason. That was a very nice idea.
They saved their life?
When they ended up living.
Oh, they did? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't get that part.
The Gemara didn't say, but they ended up living.
This is in the time of the Romans? Like, do we know?
Nebuchadnezzar, Bavel. This is in Sefer Daniel.
Okay.
Right. So I thought that was a very nice idea, and I just want to share one more lesson and learn from us. Again, not direct. This is more of a drushi. That was a drushi also, but a little more of a drush lesson from the frogs that I thought, based on what was brought down, it's brought down by Rabbi Baruch Simon in Sefer Imrei Baruch, and I thought it was a very nice idea as well. So the Yalkut Shimoni says, this is the second source on the second page on the back of the sheet. The Yalkut Shimoni says, Harbe minei tzvardeim havi aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That many frogs Hashem brought upon the Mitzrayim and said, Batal tzvardeim. We know that was singular. So Rashi points out one of the reasons that it was singular is one frog came up and they all hit the frog and it multiplied. But the Yalkut Shimoni says, why is it called here Tzvardeya? Why does Hashem find necessary to call it Tzvardeya here in this pasuk and not Tzvardeim? because it wants to bring to our attention the word Sfardeya is really a conjugation of two separate words. Sipur sheyesh bodeya. It's a bird that has knowledge. What does that mean? Sipur sheyesh bodeya. B'shah shahayu ha'ofos smeim, said the Agashim Mariyu. At the moment when birds are thirsty, v'hayu misyarim l'shtos mayim, and they don't know if the water that they see below is water that's good for them or bad for them, it's poisonous water or not, dangerous waters. Hayakoriosam, the frogs call out to them from the swamp. V'omer lehem ba'u v'shasu v'al tirau. Come drink, don't be afraid. So the frogs, the able deya, they have knowledge. Knowledge in what sense? To be able to distinguish good from bad. And therefore, it's sipur sheyesh bodeya is the word sifar. It's sipur that has knowledge. And the frogs are the ones who are able to distinguish between danger and safety. And they're the ones who are able to tell the birds who are flying up above and others by croaking that the water is safe to drink.
Because that's their environment.
That's their environment. And it's also, but according to the way Yalkut Shimoni understands it, it's not just nature, it's deya. As we see, deya in a moment, as we're going to see in a minute, deya is the highest level of knowledge is to be able to distinguish, as the case might be. In this case, as it's good from bad. So Rabbi Simon discusses that one of the lessons from Sefar Deya is the ability to be able to distinguish from many things, from good, from bad, from right, from wrong, from kadosh, from tumah, from holy, and from mundane or profane, as the case might be, is the hallmark of a Jew, and is one of the most important things that we can do in our lives. And he quotes the Gemara in Yerushalmi that makes this point in discussing the first bracha in Shmona Esrei on the second section. So we know that in the section, the middle bracha of Shmona Esrei, when we have Bakasha, the first bracha is the bracha of Das. Atach hanei Das. Deya. And on Motzei Shabbos, we know that on Shabbos we don't make bakashos. We don't ask for personal requests on Shabbos. And the question is, the Gemara Yerushalmi discusses, what happens if a person is davening, as we've all done, on Shabbos, and you all of a sudden you start saying, usually don't read it until a little later on, until you hit yourself. You say, but let's say a person is davening, they realize that they're saying weekday Shemona Esrei on Shabbos. So the rabbis in the Gemara, right, they gave us the out. There was already a problem there at times. It's not just us. So the Gemara says, what do you do? So says the Gemara Yerushalmi, Parak Dalet Halacha Dalet, the third source down. Haya Omer Mispal, if someone is standing and davening b'Shabbos, v'shachach shel Shabbos v'hiskir shel Chol. He forgets that it's Shabbos and he starts davening weekday Shemona Esrei. Chuna Omer Ispelugun. Stop right there. If in the middle of a bracha, stop where you are. Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov Rav Sheshes Chad Amar Chotech es bracha. So one says I apologize. It's belugan from the word pligi. It's a machlokas. So Chuna Omer, it's a machlokas what you do. I apologize. Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov Rav Sheshes. It's a machlokas between Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov and Rav Sheshes. Chad Amar Chotech et bracha. One says you stop where you are. Chotech bracha, you cut the bracha in half. Whatever you are, stop. It's not appropriate to daven fast about kashers on Shabbos. V'charana Omer Gomer es bracha. I wonder if that's a typo. Should Acher Omer? Okay, I'm not sure what it should say, but maybe Acher Omer. Gomer es bracha. You finish the entire bracha. No matter what you're up to, even if it's the wrong bracha, you complete the bracha. And then they say, although there's a machlokas what to do in general, hakol modim, everybody agrees, b'chonein hada'as, that if it's the bracha, the first of the bakashos, of atach ne'am da'as, shehu gomra, that you finish the bracha. Why? How come there's a machlokas by the other bakashos, b'rfe'enu, and shma kolenu, and slachlanu, and ashivenu, whether or not you finish the bracha? But here, everyone agrees that you finish the bracha. So the Gemara says, V'ha Rebbe. This is like the position of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, Tama ani. It bothered me. It always bothered me. Heyich batlu chonin hadas b'Shabbos. How can we not say chonin das on Shabbos? How can a person not say this bracha? Im ein deya tefillah minayin. If you don't have knowledge, you don't have tefillah. Right? Without what this bracha conveys, you can't have a tefillah. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and similarly says Rabbi Yitzchak, Gedolahi, the day is so great, Shehi memotze bein shtei askaros, that it's found between the two names of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. As it says, Ki Kel Deos Hashem. Kel and Hashem are separated by the word Deos. Is Devayish Minim Manhadan, some bring another pasuk as a proof for this. Az Tavin Yiras Hashem B'das Elokim Timsa. Yiras Hashem and Elokim Timsa are separated by the word Das. So Deya is found between the two names of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's almost godlike to be able to have this ability, to be able to distinguish, to have knowledge. And that's the bracha Atach Onelam Das. You gave man Das, and that's why that's the first bracha from Esrei. As we're going to see in a minute, that before a person can embark on tefillah, they have to first recognize this godly gift of Deya.
Is there an answer for Yehuda Nasi?
No, so that's what he's saying. Oh, he says Talmud doesn't mean he's looking for an answer. He's always bothered me. It was a wonderment to me.
Okay.
Meaning, I think there's a discussion. Why don't we say on Shabbos in general about kashrus? I don't think it's Gemara in Bava. I think it's Gemara in Yerushalmi. It says that we're not allowed to be shol tzrachav. You can't ask for your personal needs on Shabbos. And although one can argue that this is more of this is not so much of a personal need, like in the sense like a rifa'enu, where I might get depressed on Shabbos and I'll lose my focus. That this is a day of rest and a day of tranquility. I think because you can say chonen adam ladas is more of, it's not.
Is it considered a bakasha? I'm not really.
It's considered a bakasha, the first of the bakashos, yeah. I think the understanding is that when a person has to ask for bina, so it still falls into that category, that a person is looking for insight, and that could have their mind weighed